Making predictions is always tricky, of course. I am reading, and no doubt you are as well, that in the United States, for example, they are forecasting the possibility of a peak mid to late January, and then it could go down quite precipitously. What do you think?
Fingers tightly crossed. The sooner the peak, the better. I think mid-January seems to make sense when we look at other places that have experienced their Omicron wave a little bit earlier than ours. Of course, it's very hard to make these country-to-country comparisons because there's so many differences between the countries. So what happens somewhere else doesn't mean it's going to happen exactly the same here. We have slightly different demographics and vaccine uptake and vaccine rollout. It just there are enough differences that it's hard to make these direct comparisons. But I do think it's reasonable that it'll peak hopefully sometime soon in the middle of the month, and then hospitalizations follow very closely after that, so that we do start to see a decline, because our healthcare systems are under significant strain right now.
Speaking of differences, we have an interesting situation on this Monday where in Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, the Yukon, about 1 million kids are going back to class, but in the rest of the country, they're not. What's your read on that?
There's a lot of different. This wouldn't be the first time that everyone looks at the same data and comes to different conclusions. We've seen this time again throughout the pandemic. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of kids going back to school. It just has to be done in a safe manner. And, different provinces have different back to school plans, but a lot of them still heavily rely on better quality masking, improving vaccination in everyone under the roof, including educators, administrators, and students, better ventilation in the classrooms. Some places have more stringent testing requirements. It's obviously, even in a world of unlimited resources, there's obviously still going to be outbreaks. I really hope we can do everything we can to create safer indoor environments, get kids back to school, but obviously have remote learning options, because not everyone comes from the same place. Some kids might do better at home. Some kids might be going back to a family where they would just have a bad outcome if COVID was brought into the family. So I hope there's remote learning options. But in general, I really do hope kids go back to school.
And I want to get your read as well, because I know you've weighed in on this before, but Canada's Health Minister, Jean-Yves Duclos, is saying, provinces now need to have some hard conversations about the idea of mandatory vaccinations in order to help get us out of this nightmare, because, as you know, there are millions of Canadians who've still chosen not to get vaccinated. Some European countries are doing this already, moving toward mandatory vaccinations. What do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate if you line up a ton of people, you're going to get vastly different opinions. My personal take is that I don't think that's the best path forward. It's certainly a conversation that we can have, but I think there's better methods. I think we still have a ways to go to have better outreach, better communication, enrolling behavioral change experts and social scientists to really reach out to those who remain unvaccinated, with the appreciation that we're never going to get to 100%, but we can get closer to that if we take the right steps.
Dr. Bogosh, always good to see you. I appreciate you coming on the show on this Monday with us.
Have a great day.
We'll keep our eye on that story for you. Meantime, the Prime Minister will be talking with Canada's premiers about the COVID crisis. The call with premiers comes after that conversation happened last week, where the Health Minister said it might be time for provinces to consider making vaccines mandatory. Already we're hearing, though, in Saskatchewan and Alberta, the premiers there saying they do not intend to make that happen. Schools in Alberta, speaking of which, welcoming students back to class. Some parents very happy about it. Not all, though, are confident that their kids should be back in in-person learning. CTV's Joe Scarpelli has more on the first day back in Edmonton. Joe.
A full parking lot, the lights at the crosswalks have been going on and off steady, footprints all over the snow, all signs that school is back in Alberta. Now, while we've heard over and over again how important it is to have kids in the physical classroom as opposed to the virtual one, there are some concerns about how the government is handling the return. For example, the province has promised to deliver millions of rapid tests and medical masks to schools, but not all schools have them today. Instead, the Alberta government says to expect them to all be delivered by the end of the week. So for now, bring your own masks, find your own test. Also, Alberta Health Services will no longer be doing contact tracing, while it focuses more on high-risk settings. One local parent group is pushing to have that changed right away. Here's how students and parents at this school are feeling on day one.
I'm nervous, but I know that it's what they need for their mental health and their learning.
I'm excited
excited, a little nervous, but excited, yeah.
I'm happy to just be in person. I learn better that way. I prefer this to online schooling.
Some are more confident than others when it comes to staying in school for good this time, but everyone we spoke to this morning hopes there will not be a return to the virtual classroom. Joe Scarpelli, CTV News, Edmonton.
In the United States, the